Hi and welcome back to the channel. Yeah, got a new hat, got a Vegemite hat. It's not really seasonal because it's corduroy and it's summertime here, but it was on sale and I decided I was going to buy it anyway. But I'm going to go back to one that kind of fits my head a little bit better and is a little bit more comfortable. Yep, so how are you? This video is the 2021 rewatches of movies that I've enjoyed. And there were a lot of them. Winnowing down the list was pretty difficult, but I've done it and I want to get started right now. The first movie is Sam Peckinpah's 1975 action thriller, The Killer Elite, with James Caan, Robert Duvall, Arthur Hill, Burt Young, Gig Young, don't think they're related, and Bo Hopkins.
Mike Locken and George Hansen are friends. They share just about everything.
Hey, give me 100. Yeah, but what can you do with this stuff now? It's monopoly money.
The same apartment.
I gotta shower and shave, man. Here's your juice. You can shower there.
The same women.
What do you think of that little chick you just left in bed? Pretty nice.
They even share the same job.
It's about a bunch of private mercenary contractors working for a company that hires itself out to the CIA. And it's got all the usual action things. It's set in and around San Francisco. It looks really good. It's got treachery, it's got gunplay, it's got Uzis, it's got MAC-10 machine guns, it's got bombs, it's got stupid policemen. It's got everything you want in a 1970s action film. And it's kind of self-aware as well. Even though Peckinpah's doing a kind of crisp action movie, it's kind of satirical. And one of the nice things about it right at the start is you get a kind of really nice buddy rapport between Duvall and Caan, which I really like, and it looks like some of it was improvised and it works. It cements a relationship which is essential to the plot, and it's just one of those movies that I can go back to repeatedly and still have a lot of fun with. Second one is kind of the bastard child of a trilogy, and it is Shaft in Africa with Richard Roundtree. And this one's a bit different because Shaft is asked to go undercover in an illegal immigration ring into Europe from Africa. So he's got to pretend to be an African person. And so a lot of it was set in South Africa, some of it was set in Paris. But it's taking Shaft out of his comfort zone, which the first movie established beautifully with the Times Square stuff and all of that. But I rewatched Shaft in Africa, and I think it's much better than I appreciated it being before. I like Shaft, I like Shaft's big score, but I think Shaft in Africa is worth a rewatch if you're into blaxploitation and if you like a bit of Richard Roundtree action. The third movie is Moulin Rouge, not the one that the robot known as Baz Luhrmann made, but the original version from the 1950s, directed by John Huston and starring Jose Ferrer as Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. It really evokes the mood and the dynamism of Lautrec's art and the kind of life of Paris in the late 1890s. It's just a beautifully shot film. It's a really underappreciated movie, and it's miles and miles and parsecs ahead of the Baz Luhrmann movie with Nicole Kidman. I will not rewatch that film because I just think it's a obvious piece of rubbish. But Moulin Rouge, the original, I've got a Blu-ray of it finally, and it looks fantastic. Really enjoyed rewatching it. It's got dancing, it's got romance, it's got tragedy in it. It really is a fine piece of cinema. The next movie is a classic, and everybody's seen it, but I really enjoyed revisiting it this year. I did it for the radio, in fact, for the ABC radio gig that I do with ABC Radio Northern Territory each week. And it is Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. The title sequence, without the titles, I used the extended version. I've got both versions on a Blu-ray I've got. But the original version, without the titles over that enormous tracking shot at the start of the film, really works. It builds a world in a way that I don't think other movies have done up until that stage. It evokes the border town sleaziness, it evokes a sense of history about it. It just looks and feels great. You got the problematic aspects of Charlton Heston playing a Mexican, but that for the 1950s was par for the course, unfortunately. But revisiting it, particularly the scenes between Welles and Marlene Dietrich, is really touching and deep, and every time I go back to Orson Welles movies, I appreciate all over again the art of the man and just how good he was at what he did. And revisiting Touch of Evil was, for me, a really satisfying experience. Then I looked at Planet of the Vampires, a Mario Bava movie with Barry Sullivan in it. I like movies like this that do so much with so little. The use of all that trickery that Mario Bava did from having been a non-director for so many years and just evoking an alien planet on a fairly empty soundstage is marvellous. The bits with the giant dead alien really work, and the alien technology. It's just a movie so far ahead of the curve of its time that I really like to watch it now and then, just to appreciate that this is a movie that gave us things like Alien and many other films after it. It's an underestimated progenitor of so many different science fiction movies that people speak of very highly. Getting those kind of primary colour backlights and the use of stage fog and all sorts of effects like that just works for me. It's a sweet spot for my science fiction viewing, and I appreciated revisiting that one as well. The next one's also an Italian movie, but very much in a different genre. It's the Commedia dell'Italiana film Il Sorpasso, directed by Dino Risi, with Jean-Louis Trintignant and Vittorio Gassman playing two guys on a public holiday in Italy in the summer, travelling around the area around Rome and just kind of getting to know each other and filling out their backstory. It's a kind of a little bit of a story about the changes in Italy at the time, where Italy was going from a primarily agrarian society to an urban-based one, and the tensions that were there. And it's also about the fragility of men and how men put up a bold front when behind it they are at times a little bit sad and a little bit fragile. Il Sorpasso plays really well to a modern audience because it recognises some of the things about being a man that we're only now rediscovering and appreciating in modern society. And I really love that film. I love the use of pop music of the time. I like the La Dolce Vita vibe about it without it in any way emulating Fellini. And it's just a classic that you should really check out if you can get a chance to pick up a copy of Il Sorpasso. And I watched a few comedies that I'd seen before as well, things like S.O.B., the Blake Edwards satire on Hollywood with Robert Preston and William Holden and Robert Webber and Richard Mulligan, and Julie Andrews, of course, getting her baps out.
Substances.
It's a savage satire of Hollywood. It doesn't always land, but there's some really lovely comedic dialogue in that film. And I love the relationship between the three older guys who have been around Hollywood for a long time and have a very jaded opinion of the industry in which they work. It's just a lot of fun, that one. Another film that I've revisited and really liked is a French film from the late 1940s, and it's Jacques Tati's Jour de Fête. It's just great. It's about a postman who works in a little village and sees the mechanization of the American postal system and tries to adapt his little postal round on his bicycle to modern production methods. It's funny. It satirizes productivity. Jacques Tati was a genius of physical comedy. He was incredibly visually inventive. And Jour de Fête, which has been restored because it was made with a colour process that didn't really work very well when it was originally made, but it was restored and it looks great, and it's just so much fun to revisit the world of Jacques Tati. It's not a Monsieur Hulot movie, but I'm kind of anxious in the new year to revisit a couple more Jacques Tati movies and just enjoy the comedy. It doesn't matter that much if you don't like subtitles. It doesn't matter if you don't speak French. A good Jacques Tati comedy, and there aren't any bad ones, is a joy. And during this somewhat difficult year, comedies became very important to me at various times. Another one was Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills, the Paul Bartel comedy with Jacqueline Bisset, Ed Begley Jr., Paul Bartel's in it as well. Just a real kind of comedy of manners about the rich versus the poor, and almost like a French farce sexual comedy. It's about class, it's about people who've got no class. It's also got Paul Mazursky in it as well, which is kind of interesting. It's a movie I first saw on VHS days as well. It's got a bit of subtext there about the way women, particularly wealthy women at the time, were treated as objects and ornaments and trophies. And it lets them have their little bit of oxygen there. I like the choice of music in the movie as well, which is underestimated in comedy. This may be my favourite Paul Bartel movie. I like Eating Raoul a lot. I like Death Race 2000 a lot. But I've got a real soft spot in my heart for scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills. Got a couple more for you, but I'll leave the one I like best for last. I rewatched Cliff Richard's Summer Holiday, which is about a whole bunch of guys who work in a bus depot who decide they want to go to Greece for their summer holidays. And so they kit out a bus. They're given a bus by their bosses. They kit out the bus as accommodation and travel through Europe, having adventures and romances. It's full of little musical numbers. It's full of joyous moments. Cliff Richard was never an incredible presence on screen, but the ensemble working with him really good, particularly Una Stubbs playing one of the girls that they pick up while they're hitchhiking. She's brilliant in this. Fine actress, fine dancer, and she just lights up the screen a lot. Of course, it's got the iconic song Summer Holiday in it, but everything apart from Cliff Richard in this movie is just on point. It's a lot of fun, and it satirises popular culture at the time while just showing a bunch of working class guys having a good time travelling across Europe. That brings me to Bob Fosse's All That Jazz. All That Jazz is such a beautiful film. It's bold because it's Bob Fosse basically doing an autobiography about him almost dying of a heart attack just before he made this film. And his kind of character in it, Joe Gideon, played by Roy Scheider, totally out of his normal cast, is great. It's got a terrific supporting cast as well. Anne Reinking, who was actually one of the girlfriends of Bob Fosse, plays the girlfriend of the Joe Gideon character. It's got Max Wright in it. It's got Jessica Lange. Cliff Gorman's in it as well, playing somebody who's very much like Dustin Hoffman playing Lenny in the movie that Fosse did of The Life of Lenny Bruce. It's very kind of romantic play, but I like it a lot. The music's great. The dancing is fantastic. Fosse's Fellini's 8.5. It's an autobiographical piece which shows his character, warts and all, and with more hair. And All That Jazz is just one of the greats of American cinema at the time. Even though by modern standards, of course, Joe Gideon and Fosse himself was a fairly toxic character. But the flaws are there on the screen in the character, and they are admitted by the character, which is kind of interesting. The last movie I've got for you is a concert film from 1972, directed by the same guy who directed Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Mel Stewart. And it is What Stacks, which is a concert film for me to end all concert films. It was shot on the 20th of August 1972 in the Coliseum in Los Angeles, and it celebrated the 7th anniversary of the Watts riots. And it was a kind of gathering of black culture. There's a whole bunch of interviews with black opinion leaders at the time, including Richard Pryor and Ted Lang, who went on to have a role as Isaac in The Love Boat, and a bunch of other people. And they cross-cut between the crowds enjoying the music itself, and these talking heads talking about what it is to be a black person in America in the 1970s. It's dynamic, it's energetic, it's full-on wonderful. And it starts out with one of my favourite Stax songs from the Stax label in the 1970s, which is What You See Is What You Get by the Dramatics. It just starts with that energy, it goes all the way through, and it's just leaves your ears ringing and leaves you stunned when you see it. I think it's in this way better than Woodstock as a documentary, and it does have that dynamism and that grassroots passion that I really appreciate in this kind of film. And the music, of course, is fantastic. You got Isaac Hayes in there, you got the Bar-Kays, you've got so many different black. It's got entertainers from a whole bunch of different styles of black music, from gospel all the way through to Isaac Hayes doing Shaft and the Bar-Kays doing Thundershaft. It's, if you like that kind of music, it is just a wonderful film to watch and to just let wash over you and to enjoy and to listen to what the people have to say, because a lot of the things there were concerns for black people in the 1970s, unfortunately are still concerns for black communities in the 21st century. It is a wonderful piece of a kind of moment in time, and I really appreciated it for that. So that's basically it. I've got a few more things, but I don't think I'll make this video any longer than it is. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing and leaving a comment. You can also support the channel by donating at patreon.com/paleocinema. And I've got a couple more videos before the end of the year, because I'm not taking a break over the end of the year break. I've got my end of the year in memoriam video to do. I've got a few other things I really want to hit before the end of the year. So anyway, in the meantime, look after yourselves. Things are getting a bit crazy out there again, and you know what I mean by that. Wear a mask, get jabbed, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch movies that enrich you and comfort you. And I'll catch you next time.